So you say you don't have the typical college experience, I'm assuming, not the bar hopping and all the party and all that.
No.
But you were heavily involved, working with the radio station, also had these other jobs. What do you have to say about the sacrifices that you had to make in order to achieve those goals that you had, or things you had to do to reach those goals?
Yeah, so it's fun because I think when I think back to that time, I was looking for something to pour all of my attention into that had previously been on ballet. Like, what was I going to direct all that into, and that go-getter attitude? And I needed to make some extra money. My parents were like, this college that we thought you had scholarship for is costing us too much. You know, come on, girl, you got to pull your weight here. So I went to the on-campus radio station. I had grown up loving NPR and listening to radio. I love the idea of telling a story just via the audio medium and not having to see anything, and you kind of create your own picture in your mind. And so that's what I felt like radio would offer up. But when I went up there, they only had one opening in sports. And I was like, I'll take it. And then I thought, what have I done? I don't know anything, and this is going to be a disaster, you know? But I realized very quickly that I was bad at it, and so I wanted to be good at it. And how was I going to do that? Just getting a million reps. And one of the things that later in life I've kind of looked back on and realized, Malcolm Gladwell in The Outliers says you need 10,000 hours of reps to become an expert at something. And I accidentally got my 10,000 hours on radio at WRUF in my part of my freshman, sophomore, and then junior year at Florida. So it was really every day I was doing radio. It was a 3:45 a.m. wake-up call as a college student, which was always fun. I don't think I slept. I think I just never slept.
Forget 8 a.m. 3:45 is crazy.
I know. Then I would just, go on to class for the rest of the day. I started realizing that the written side of the business was going to be important to me. So at that time, college football recruiting was becoming a really big deal. And I wrote for all the subscription websites and did sort of like a very early version of internet TV for them. So we hosted a show in somebody's garage. We just put like a black tarp up. Your studio was way fancier than what that was.
Shout out to Seymour Media, capturing this.
Seymour Media, let's go. But yeah, so it was anything and everything I could get my hands on. And I think for me, I started to realize that, and at that time, I was doing every sport. So I was covering track and field, I was covering lacrosse, I was covering women's soccer, I was covering women's basketball, men's basketball. Football was sort of the other part of it, but mainly high school and the scouting side of it, which I think gave me a niche that was interesting to some people. So just making every possible connection. The final point I think about that time that's really important is social media was still pretty new. This was in 2010, 2011 even, the latter part of my college time. I just started tweeting things out. Like I was going around to 7-on-7 camps on my own in Florida, and I would just show up and try to interview people and see what happened. And then I would have these things. I'd be like, Lamar Jackson is looking at these schools. And people would be like, who's this?
How does she know about
that, And it was how I would get my foot in the door at places. They would say, okay, well, she's getting information and she's making connections. And it was just, I would just throw it out there and see what would happen. And oftentimes it would get recognized as, okay, well, she's got some good info and maybe there's something here.
That's what we talked about on the way over here. You have to put it in the work. People have a dream or have a goal. I want to do this. But what have you done thus far? So I think that's important. And while you were doing these jobs with the recruiting and working at the radio station, what's the story about the sleeping at the dealership? I've heard this story, but I want you to tell it.
I got to tell you, that's a tried and true trick. So I was covering, at that time I really mainly worked for Scout.com. This was during college and then a little bit after as well, because I was working for Fox Sports in conjunction. They own Scout. So I would go and do like a 7-on-7 camp, let's say in South Florida somewhere. And then I would need to get back for the Florida college game on a Saturday. So whatever was happening in the high school world was oftentimes on a Friday night, as we know. So I would do that, and then the only way to get back in time was to basically drive overnight through the state. So, of course, a girl's got to sleep for 20 minutes, maybe a little longer. So I realized that if I would pull into a car dealership and just turn off my car and lock it, it wouldn't be some unusual sight for somebody. They wouldn't notice the car. If I was sleeping at a gas station or something, which I did that too, I don't recommend that. people might notice, and they'd be like, what's this person sleeping in the car for? But that always would work for me, and I would actually, I had like a Magellan, like one of the, you're too young to know about these, but like when it wasn't on our phone, the GPS wasn't on our phone, I had this Magellan, and I would like beep boop type in my little address. And
I know about that. My dad had one of those.
we love those. And so I would look for car dealerships in the Magellan and see where they were, which ones would be along my route, and I would pull in there and take a little snoozle.
Yeah, a little dealership trick.
You know, they'd probably be like, somebody with a car dealership is going to be like, that's illegal and you were trespassing. And I'm sorry.
It's in the past.
Yeah,
Sorry
it's
about
fine.
that.
It's fine. It was years ago.